public hearing of the Select Board to order. We have a hearing today on a community development block grant application. Kathy Conway is here with us today as well. Welcome, Kathy. She'll walk through part of this, and the town manager will also begin discussing this, and then we'll take questions later.
Okay. Yeah, if you want, I'll just give a quick background on the CDBG program itself, and then maybe you could speak to the project in more detail. So the Community Development Block Grant Program funds are available to municipalities for economic development, public facility and housing rehabilitation projects, and planning grants that primarily benefit low and moderate income persons. Towns are eligible for up to $500,000 a year, and up to $500,000 a year for economic development projects or public housing, as well as up to $500,000 a year in emergency funds. And planning grant funds are available up to $12,000 per year. And municipalities are eligible to apply for micro enterprise assistance grants without having it to count against the other programs' caps. So general project overview. So this is a economic development grant project for up to $500,000 in 2017 CDBG funds. The funds would be used for infrastructure upgrades in support of the Schillings Beer Company expansion. Jobs will be created and retained and available to low and moderate income persons. Up to $20,000 will be used for grant writing and administration expenses. And I think we want to talk a little bit in the detail about the project before we go over what the housing, because we have to readopt the housing and community development plan.
Yep. So in essence, I think that Schillings is looking to expand on the property adjacent to their current site. And there are some public infrastructure improvements that need to be made in order to support that development. So that's what these funds would be utilized for, are municipal infrastructure improvements. If anybody has any questions?
How much is it per job they create?
$20,000
$20 per job.
Yep. Yep.
How many jobs are they gonna create?
We are still working out the details on the number of jobs created and retained. That's why this says up to 500,000. I think the last time we chatted with them, it was about 17 created and retained, but we're looking for refinement on what retained means according to the definitions, so.
Who owns the property?
This would be for infrastructure improvements on town property. So infrastructure needed to include roads,
Who
sewer.
owns Schillings property? You mentioned Schillings. Who owns it?
Was it just Schillings?
Schillings doesn't
Company?
own anything, do they?
Yeah.
They own the building?
The expansion site.
They own the building?
The expansion site.
They own the
I'm not
present
sure
building.
about the ownership of the current building. That was
Right, they
part
own,
of it.
yeah, they own, Schillings Beer Company owns the property that they're doing the expansion on, from what I understand.
Does Schillings Beer Company own the present property they're operating out of, is my question.
Oh, I don't know, I just am looking at the expansion.
So are they relocating?
They're expanding, they're not relocating, they're expanding.
So they don't own, you don't know whether they own.
We can look it up and get back to you.
Well,
but that's not.
the
Right.
question is a legitimate question as to who owns it. Okay, that would be the first part.
Who owns the existing building? What's it have to do with this?
It's gonna be attached, Mr. Seligman. It's
No.
gonna be attached to the existing building.
No.
What do you mean no?
This is it's a separate structure.
Is
It's an expansion of the business, but it's a separate structure. And so this grant application deals with that parcel and expansion, not the existing.
Doesn't mean that they don't own the existing building.
It's not relevant to the
Yes, it is irrelevant. Because what happened, what you're gonna do, you're gonna make an entity like a share and beer so huge for a small town like a little town that, doesn't make any sense to really give this entity this $500,000, grant.
This money's not going to Schilling's Beer Company. This would be used in support of upgrading infrastructure, town infrastructure, that will support the growth of that business. So,
You're
for
talking
example,
about the roads and
yeah,
the sewer
roads,
lines.
exactly.
Sewer, storm drainage.
That's correct.
Oh, you mean, if some of this money goes to the River District too, something like that?
That's what it's used for, the infrastructure in the River District.
All
yes.
of it would.
Yeah,
You know,
Except
None of
for
it would
the,
go to Schillings.
except for administration.
But
expenses.
the land surrounding Schillings, with the property they own, that needs infrastructure repairs, sewers and
Yeah,
roads,
and about it,
that's
by the
what
way,
this
so
grant
they-
is
yeah.
about.
Anything that these grant funds are used for has to be owned and maintained by the town.
Right.
So that's where it will be municipal sewer, municipal storm drainage.
As I think we've discussed in the past regarding the River District, the sewer system, many of the storm drain systems are some of the oldest in the community and are in need of replacement and repair. This kind of folds into that very nicely because we can get that section fixed and there's a specific site involved. But here's the concept, I think, and Bruce, the question is a good question in terms of ownership on one level. So we have, let's say we have Schillings operating out of the building they're in now, and they're leasing that space.
That's right.
But the building that they are going to erect is on land that they own that adjoins or sits right next to the place that they're leasing. That looks like what the model is. But the money that we're asking for would be fixing the front of that whole situation. That's why it's a good question, it's relevant on one level, but on another level, we're just talking about the land and what's underneath the land in the front and maybe on the sides of that building. That's what it is.
I'm assuming that, I haven't seen any building like this on it, but I'm assuming that they're gonna build a building, is that what they're looking at?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And if they are, my question is, this grant is gonna improve sewerage? Can they get sewerage out of it?
They'll
And
be-
how?
They'll be tied into the town's sewer system, I would presume. That's
Yeah.
been part of the conversation with
That's
their
right.
engineers. Yep.
How do you get it out of a hole? Are they pumping it, or are they,
That'd be up to the engineers. I would
well,
know.
I'm asking
yeah.
that before you apply for a grant. I mean, here we are getting money to improve something, and if they can't get the sewer lines, other than I know you put pumps in there.
Well, I mean, that's really their only alternative.
Well, the grant's
for-
all
for
conditional upon,
sewage.
the grant is conditional upon them doing it.
Yeah.
Is coming to the town with an acceptable building plan, which would include sewage, which would include drainage and everything else.
Well, I know, but if we're building something down here, it doesn't, we're applying for a grant to fix something up out of it, to build it for a building, and if the building can't get sewerage out of it because it's too low,
Then it won't happen.
it won't happen.
Not if they can't get the sewage out of it.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Well,
One-
that's,
one
well,
point.
it's still in the planning stages, the whole design and
Yeah.
planning for the building. But everything is contingent upon that being built. We don't get a dime if it's not being built, or they're
Yeah.
getting the jobs.
At one point, they were talking about putting their brewing equipment and their entire brewing process into the new building, which would then give them a little bit more space for the restaurant area. I don't know if that's still what it is, but it's really immaterial to the grant itself. The assumption is that whatever the pumping system would need to be, they would have to do that. To continue to be a successful business.
Right. Yeah, and they're working closely with town officials on designing a sewage system, so.
Where does this plan start and stop?
You mean as far as infrastructure improvements?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there'd be defined infrastructure improvements that we need in the plan, the plan right now would be to start where the current, planning stopped, which is, just, abutting the parking area where the mural is and working up, through Mill Street to Main Street.
So I'm assuming at this end, you're talking about the mural?
No, the mural, which is on the, parking area over here near the,
Guess I don't
music park.
know, I don't know where it is then.
Is the one that says "Welcome to Littleton."
That's over there.
It's just over here, towards Schillings.
Oh,
Yeah, the
Over
one
here.
that's behind. It's behind like the Nest and
I see.
yeah, and
So
Chudder's and
it's
all
gonna
that.
start from where,
where our plans currently end, the River District plans for improvement. Right now, they run from, over near Saranac up through the back here, and that's the program that we're trying to get underway for this
So
year.
it would start there and go how far?
The desire would be to get it all the way up to Mill Street. So we have to look at, for town infrastructure, things like pedestrian movement, or, sewer, water, electricity, roadway, storm drain. So we're basically piggybacking, more infrastructure improvements off of economic development activity, items that would be needed to help support that.
So will this support any other ventures other than Schillings and Beer?
Yeah, any properties that are back there, or properties that are coming up in that area, sure.
But in order to apply for these funds, we have to have a business that says that they will create jobs. That's one of the sort of key components of this particular program.
How much interest and dividends tax do they pay? Not interest and dividends, how much room and meals tax do they pay?
I couldn't answer that off the top of my head. I know that rooms and meals are significantly up.
They are for the town, but I'm generally asking the reason why is you're talking about how many people in turn that they employ or whatever it is, and you want to make sure that if they're talking about employing more people or whatever it is, they have to pay a bed and board tax on the thing from that part for every pizza and beer or anything like that that's sold. And it would tell you how much economics money that they're actually generating for our community in here now. It's the same way with any restaurant or motel or anything like that. I think we get about $300,000 a year back, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, on it from that part. But for an entity to turn around and to benefit from it, it's not just employees, you should be looking at it that says how much money are they actually bringing back into the community as a result of it. It's
I guess one way to look at it, it's a good way to look, is that any business in town currently, if someone, for example, is developing on any other road, there's no requirement that they improve infrastructure, any municipal infrastructure, but we may be required to in order to accommodate the needs of that business. So maybe a company moves in and they use the roadway more heavily and it destroys the road, or maybe they start using a larger capacity of the sewer plant or requires to have larger sewer lines, or there's a lot of pedestrian traffic and we don't have any sidewalks. There's no requirement of that business to actually provide those infrastructure improvements that would be needed to support the business. In this case, Schillings potentially is being a good partner in volunteering to join in this program with the town to help us get funds to do that. But they don't necessarily have to. There's a lot of paperwork on their part that they have to do as far as tracking their employees to meet the
I see
requirements of the grant.
improving the infrastructure anywhere, because they do get old out of it. But I look at it and says, if you're adding something and you're coming down here, one is, I would love to be able to see what you have for parking facilities available. I would like to see if you've got trucking that's gonna go down through there, how are they gonna unload and load as far as trucking is concerned? It's been a nightmare in the past out of it in here.
Those are really good points, and they've been working closely with us to review their plans, but keep in mind that Littleton has no site plan review, and so there's no requirement of any business to have any level of parking or delivery plan, no requirement to have any reviews like that whatsoever. The only reviews that we actually have some authority over would be requirements for sewer hookup. Beyond that, from what I can see, a business can pretty much, and driveway access permits, but besides that, there's no design review. That's what you're describing would be design review.
Right.
Schillings is been a really good partner, and they are working closely with the town to in effect allow us to have input on all of those steps.
Most of all,
Those are good
most
points.
of everything that's handled on Main Street from the point of water and sewerage and electrical has all been fed from the back of the properties down through here. It's not up on the Main Street.
You know, and my guess, Bruce, is that they're actually increasing production. That may be their major thrust. Having more seats in the restaurant part may or may not, you know, come out of that, but they are expanding production. So I think looking at it from that standpoint, that's what it is. But it does pose some of the issues that you raised regarding traffic down there and getting trucks in, but that's always been a problem there and probably always will.
I look at it, doesn't make any difference if it's down back or not. If you can apply for these things only once a year out of it, have you been to the planning board and asked about any other things? I mean, we've got Hitchner Manufacturing up here that's a vacant structure out of the thing on it. And we've got other parts of our community in turn that should be looked at to figure out whether this is the best place to be looking at applying for the $500,000 or whether it should be going to some other place in the community now.
None of those are in a position to be putting something forward this year, not even close.
So you can get this money every year, is that what the
It's
principal time?
annual,
Yep,
correct.
annually.
That's the town's
And,
allocation.
and I've seen in the past too where I've worked with the city of Berlin, and if they've had 2 projects in a year, the county can come in and apply for the second. So let's say in 6 or 9 months, something else comes along
Could
that
do it
you'd
through the
like to
county.
utilize these funds for, you could work through the county or something like that, so that if there was another important project that came along, there are alternative ways to make that work too.
When was the last time that the town got this, a grant of this nature?
2015 was in the fall of 2015, we were awarded $500,000 from the same program for the other portion of the river district that we're working on this year.
Yeah, that was through their public facilities rather than their economic development program, but
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Similar.
right, so
Yep.
it's CDBG, but
it's still CDB,
Yeah.
still the CDBG program.
And I'm assuming you haven't spent any of that money, or you have
this year.
Yeah, we're working
are
on it right now.
Scheduled to, yes.
spending it for engineering, or what are you doing?
This will be sewer infrastructure
Yeah.
along the river district.
And storm drainage too.
Storm
It's got
drainage.
storm
Yeah.
drainage.
So we haven't done any of it yet, huh?
Yes, we're close. We just actually selected an engineering firm. We have preliminary designs done, and we're looking at getting those finished, and then our goal would be out to bid by, I forget what month it was, but soon. Yeah. For construction, the goal would be for construction 2017.
Yeah, and then I think also, back in 2014, you received some economic development funding for the CNC equipment up at the high school,
right.
that you worked
Training.
with. Was it Rotabeck, the company that,
Yeah.
partnered with on that one?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so the program's been used by Littleton a few times in the past.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions? Is there any? Yes.
I just want to make sure that I understand exactly. You had said piggybacking versus, so is this essentially, is this an opportunity for the town to, kind of build on the success that Schillings has had here and update some infrastructure that is in need of infrastructure updating anyway?
That's
So,
what
I mean,
we're-
is it
That's
really?
what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right, so I mean,
Yeah,
that's exactly what it
right.
is, right? It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
it's that there's an opportunity there.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. And,
Okay.
yeah, yes, exactly. And it takes a business who's willing to be a partner too.
right.
Do you guys look any other way, to spend this $500,000 instead of shilling? I, maybe I'm stupid on the subject or stuff like that. I don't see why ton of this, that got so much problem with the taxpayer, and it's every year we're going to discuss all the time the same stuff, why the tax went up, why this, why that. I mean, who the hell is this guy over here? Schilling?
Rudy.
He sells a beer.
Rudy,
So
the
what?
money's not being spent for shilling. The money's being spent on infrastructure for the town.
Who
of
tear
Littleton.
down? Who tear down to that building, Mr. Seligman?
That benefits
Who tear down
everybody.
to that building?
That benefits everything. They did.
Who did that?
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
You know why they did, right?
Yes.
Why they did?
To build.
To build.
Yeah.
An expense of
Hold on, hold on.
what?
This money here is all being spent on town infrastructure that benefits everybody in that section, not just Schilling. Schilling is the one that's allowing us to get this grant because they're creating the jobs.
Why they don't ask for?
Pardon me?
Why they don't ask for? Why we gotta ask for? Why you guys
It
gotta
has
ask?
to come
Because
through
they
the
can't get it.
community grant.
Hey, why don't you ask that $500,000, to do some other infrastructure? We talked about last week, right, about streets that they are deteriorating. You talk about sewage that have been deteriorated, right,
Yeah.
What's it,
Remember now, this is a bond.
It
This
is a
is a
bond.
grant, not a bond.
oh, it's a grant?
It's a grant.
That's I mean, we gotta
It's-
mention this, a
it's-
grant.
It's giving, it's coming in as a grant,
When-
right? But the reason why it's coming here now and maybe not in 2 years to fix the infrastructure and the roads is that we have a producer who wants to expand his production, and he's suggesting that he can create jobs. That ties right into this grant in terms of what the need is. That's why it's focused right now here. If they weren't there, sooner or later, we would have to get money to fix up the storm sewers and the sewers and the roads because they're in such bad repair. Some of that, I've been told, some of the sewers and the storm drains are some of the oldest in town that's been here for a very long period of time. And as you know, we had to do some work down at the intersection here, I'm sorry, over there, not here, over there near Schillings, a couple of years ago, and we had substantial leakage. So everything is coming together that qualifies for a grant application like this.
Don't you last year you guys asked for $900,000 for infrastructure and the river district? You did?
That's correct, yeah. we-
That's correct?
That's out of the taxpayers'
Now,
money.
that's coming from the taxpayer and the sewer user tax, correct.
Right.
It is
That is not a
$500,000.
grant. This is a grant.
This is a grant.
Nothing,
is-
nothing gets paid back.
Nothing's payback, just, that doesn't mean when you guys receive a check, 500,000, you can do whatever you want. And now you decided
Not
to,
whatever you want.
No,
What the
no.
program calls.
what the program calls for.
Yeah,
Right, right.
that'd be nice.
Rudy, and you have to have a business that is willing to guarantee the jobs to get the work done.
Right.
So Schilling is not gonna say, we'll create 20 jobs and have you do some work up on School Street. They want it down here.
Schilling is not the bad guy who's getting something for nothing. Schilling is the vehicle allowing us to get infrastructure done without using taxpayer dollars.
Mr. Seligman, if you remember correctly, another gentleman come over here in Littleton and exit 41 to create about 100 jobs, and you guys kick him off and say, go back in Rhode Island. Do that's true? I'm not mentioning no names, but that's true. Mr. Bakari from Rhode Island, he wants he wants to do infrastructure on exit 41, and what you guys do? What do you guys do?
What's that got to do with this?
It's the same thing. That guy wants to create a business. He would have given a job to 200 people, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. You don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So just, let's.
Kathy, is there anything else that you had to
No,
report to us?
you need to close this public hearing and open the next one to talk about the displacement plan. It's just
Okay.
those steps we need to go through for.
Any other
What do you
questions
got?
on this? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, close this session.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor indicate in the affirmative.
Aye.
And I will open, I'm
The
sorry.
second
this-
public hearing.
Second public hearing.
Yeah. To discuss the residential anti-displacement
Oh,
and relocation
okay.
assistance plan.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Should be on the back of your,
and that's on the back of your handouts. Do you want to do this one, or?
oh, you go ahead.
Okay,
Can
so,
I have a handout?
Yeah.
See if I can do it?
basically, what this plan does is, if any, it's a procedure in case there's a resident or business that's displaced to us utilizing these CDBG funds.
Right.
For this project, we do not anticipate any displacement or relocation of businesses or residents because it's basically an empty lot. If this money were being used to rehabilitate some apartment housing units and people were living in those units, we would have to take care that they were temporarily placed in an appropriate location while that rehab
Right.
was going on. So this, again, is a standard language document that has to be adopted for every CDBG project, but we do not anticipate any
Kathy, I think you,
displacement.
so I think you've got a boilerplate probably, if you go down to compliance. It says, well, that will be necessitated by NCIC Secure Network Services project. Don't you have the wrong project?
Oh, yep, I do, I'm sorry about that. Yep. So we anticipate no displacement as necessitated by the Schillings project.
Here it is, okay.
It's the last
Should
sentence.
unforeseen need arise, the town certifies that it will comply with the Uniform Relocation Assistance Act,
I'll
which
have to
is
reprint one real quick.
that
We've passed
document
these
there.
before.
Okay.
This is not the first time that the town has done this out of it. We did all the ones
That's right.
behind the bookstore and et cetera and stuff like that,
Right.
Yep.
years before you were here.
So we need a motion on this? Do we need to move on this one?
Actually, any comments from the public?
Public comment first.
Right.
Public comments? And then you need to close this public hearing and open the third one.
This requires a second hearing as well?
The third hearing is on the Housing and Community Development
No,
Plan.
but does this need two public hearings or just one?
Just what?
Just one.
Just for the.
The residential land
Just
use.
Oh,
one?
yeah, just, yeah,
Just one.
yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, I will close this public hearing on the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. And we're opening a third one?
Yes.
Okay, and the title of that is?
And a motion to adjourn?
Housing and Community
Motion to
Development
adjourn.
Plan.
Second.
You want a motion to close the second one?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got the
I
motion.
made-
Do I have a
Second.
second? Okay, all those in favor indicate in the affirmative?
Aye.
Thank you. And the third one is, what's the title?
Here, bottom of this page, right here.
Housing and
Oh,
Community Development.
Third public hearing on Housing and Community Development Plan. This is the second public hearing that's open. The time when this was open, and the chair asked Kathy to introduce the residential anti-displacement and relocation plan draft.
Yeah, we just did that, so that was the second one, so now we're on the third one for the Housing and Community Development Plan.
Okay.
Right, which, are you gonna go over that, Andrew?
I'd
Or
like
did
to
you
do
want me
that.
to?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yep, I
Okay,
got
so
that.
I'll open, the third session is now open.
Okay. So the Housing and Community Development Plan provides short and long-term goals for the town. Goals such as providing affordable housing, encouraging, preserving the character of the town's Main Street, encouraging growth in commercial and industrial areas, supporting efforts to develop local businesses, supporting Grafton County Economic Development Council in their work, supporting the Safe Routes to School programs, and so this particular project is consistent with the town's housing and community development plan. It is looking to develop a business in a commercial zone and support that business with municipal infrastructure. If anybody has any.
Are there any questions?
I have a question. That's very broad.
Very what?
This is very broad, this statement out of the thing, as to what it is.
It is.
And to vote on something as broad as that is, without having anything to back it up out of it, it's not necessarily a good thing for a community to jump in and vote for something that's not there.
Give me an example, Bruce, of what you're talking about.
Well, the example is, we don't have anything to go by. We've had nothing presented by any means on the thing. The worst thing that you can have is if you went for housing and you went for housing money. We got too much community housing in our community as well out of the thing on it, that are supporting and costing us with education and everything else on it. We don't have one little venture in our community out of the thing on it. We got a tremendous amount of housing that's being provided for in here that really affects the economics of your community out of it from that part. It brings in families, it brings in kids and stuff like this on it. And that opens the thing up whether you're talking about business or anything else on it. But Littleton has just gone way beyond this thing on an awful lot of these things as far as communities are concerned. And we start at one end of town and you go down here and you take the amount of housing that you have available, whether it's senior citizens or economically for people that can't afford it. We have a huge amount that Littleton has delved into. And it really can tip your town the wrong way out of the thing on it if you get too much of that type of stuff. You need private enterprise, and you do have some private enterprise, but you're creating stuff that private enterprise can't compete against out of it. I mean, you look at, you've got Crane Street Court, you've got, what's the other one over here, the Lane House, you've got the other ones that are up on Bronson Street, you've got the other end of town, it's all subsidized housing up there at it's one of the other end of town called there.
What's that got to do with this?
It has to do with housing. If you don't know, read it.
That's right.
Read it, you ought to, you're a
I
selectman,
mean,
read what it
this
is in there.
This is based on the master plan, that's where this information comes from, and I
Right.
think that that's a pretty,
It's a general
vetted document.
thing of what you deal with on.
Well, let's go to the last page, which is the 3-year plans. There's nothing in there about affordable housing. It's all about job creation and
Well, it's still,
infrastructure,
it could be.
which is what you're gonna focus on in
Yeah.
the plans. You're talking about the very general, where there's nothing specific in the
Well, we
next
don't
3 years.
have anything that's being presented in here out of it, and if you vote,
And there's nothing in the goals.
Pardon
So
me?
there's nothing in the goals for the next 3 years that calls for any kind of affordable housing.
right?
In-
But my concerns are that suddenly you pass something and then suddenly they'll bring it in without a vote on it. That's the whole problem.
Most of this has been, I don't disagree with what you're saying on the level of housing that's already here and that's been put in here. But what this is really, this is kind of almost at a higher level of goal setting. Because this community does this. It provides for the expanded affordable housing. We have done that up to this point.
Right.
As you say, encourage the introduction of energy conservation measures. We're doing that right now. Assist residents with special needs. Encourage the preservation and rehabilitation of the town's existing housing stock. All of these things we do periodically. It's at that level. It's not a commitment for something to be done right now. I haven't read this list in some time, but clearly support efforts to develop local businesses, which provides jobs. You know, we're doing,
Yeah.
that's what this grant is about. Support efforts of the Grafton County Economic Development Council, support efforts to develop for workforce housing, and support for weatherization and other energy efficiencies. We've done that and we're doing that now. So supporting safe routes to schools we've done for years. And of course, some of that has to be done this year,
Sidewalks,
as I brought up.
sidewalks and stuff like that.
Right. So we're not committed to anything specific other than what we've already committed to. It's a continuation. I guess that's the way I would like to see this. But you're right, I mean, it's a broad list of
Yeah, it
issues
can
here.
tip the wrong way in a community if you get into this thing too much out of it on subsidized units. And what it brings is, it brings in a different caliber of what you're talking about as far as your town. I'm not knocking the fact people don't have financial needs or what it is, but build it and they shall come out of the thing on it. What you get doesn't necessarily mean a great thing out of it. And in our community in turn is really relevant to the fact that we really don't have a lot of unemployed people here out of it too, as far as that goes. And I think you look at it and about 40% of your workforce comes from out of town on it into our area.
Actually, even the master plan we're updating right now on the planning board, supporting the River District redevelopment and the business incubator in Littleton, all of these things are happening. So there's nothing new, it's ongoing, but I'm sure you're concerned with the length of the list.
Part of what I have is the length of the list, but part of it is, I think, your planning board is a very good point of what you're talking about. I mean, when you apply for money in grants, whether it's down here out of it, which is probably a needed situation, but you really need to analyze your whole community of what you have, and if you're gonna spend and apply for these grant monies before you go and jump into them. You need to be looking at it and saying, is this in the best interest of our community, or should we be looking at other projects beforehand? You really need to take a balance, not just looking at the small little areas because it's adjacent to it or something like that. Get the best out of it or what you need within your community. It might be around the schools, it could be around anything that you have as far as that project's concerned.
Well, yeah, again, this, is tied to the first one, which is the grant.
Right.
Where we have a manufacturer of beer who wants to expand, and it's kind of all tied that way. I don't see anything in here that's not something that we've already not addressed at some point in the last 10 years. But your point is well taken. Any other questions or comments here? Hearing none, I will then adjourn this or close this public hearing on the third development plan.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor indicate in the affirmative.
Aye.
Aye. Now we have a number of votes to take. I would ask for a motion to approve the submittal of the CDBG application.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate in the affirmative.
Aye.
I would seek a motion to adopt the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate in the affirmative.
Aye.
Aye. And I would accept a motion to adopt the housing and community development plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate in the affirmative.
Aye.
I would seek a motion to authorize Andrew Dorset, Town Manager, to submit the application and sign or execute any and all documents necessary to effectuate the potential CDBG grant contract.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor indicate in the affirmative.
Aye.
And I would accept a motion to have NCIC write the CDBG grant on behalf of the town and to allow Andrew Dorset, Town Manager, to advertise for a grant administrator.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate in the affirmative.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you who came here today to raise questions. Thank you for those of you who came today to record this session on one level or another. And thank you, Kathy, for coming and helping us out here.
Thank you.
We do have some signatures that are needed on the original. Do we need to do that tonight, right now?
I can put it in your box.
Did we have some corrections?
Just go.
Yeah, there's a correction that I need to make on that one plan, so I can get you
Yeah,
some.
if you email it to me,
Yep.
I'll have them.
Have
Well,
them for
just
me.
Milton needs to sign it.
Yes, just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
I can do that.
All right, thank you very much. I would seek a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor indicate in the affirmative. Thank you.
That's it? We're all done?
Well done.